Welcome to the latest episode of the Blue Corner. I'm Mike, as always, one half of Long Island's first MMA podcast, The Unknown Experts. So, let's get down to it. Let's start... Where should we start? Let's start with some headlines. First and foremost, Liddell vs. Ortiz 3 is official. It's going to be November 24th at the Forum in Inglewood, California. The first ever Golden Boy promotion, the Boxing Org's MMA card. It's unclear if the card will strictly be MMA or mixed with boxing, like we've seen before in K1 and so on out in Japan. Speaking of Japan, Risen Fighting Federation, aka Pride 3.0, Dream 2.0, announces its initial fights for September 30th. Mirko Krokop returns to Japan to take on Raku Martinez, and Koji Horiguchi takes on Tenshin Nakusuke. Darren Khrushchev will be taking on Diego Brandao, two UFC vets. Bellator 205, Roger Huerta, a name from the past, will be taking on Pitbull Fieri in a fight that could resurrect Huerta's career, but it's a long shot, as he's going to have to beat one of the best guys not in the UFC to do so. But hope he puts up a fight at least. Ryan Hall, the jiu-jitsu expert who Artem Levov had to fight to a decision to avoid being subbed in the Ultimate Fighter finale a couple years back, will be taking on BJ Penn. The fight's booked, but it's unclear if it'll be November or December. And it's also unclear if this will be BJ's last ever fight or what will happen afterwards, win, lose, or draw. Nico Montano, the UFC's first ever women's flyweight champion, crowned off the Ultimate Fighter tournament. It was stripped of the women's flyweight title after missing, what was the incident? She could not fight at 228, and it was announced the day prior. It would have been her first title defense in almost a year after winning the belt, if not longer. Due to a kidney issue from cutting weight, she was hospitalized. She actually found out that she was stripped of the belt on fucking Instagram, of all places, according to her. So they're currently, the belt is vacated. Shevchenko, her would-be opponent, has been promised a shot at whoever the other person will be in the cage for the new flyweight champion. There's a couple candidates I want to point out here. Joanna Jojo Calderwood, who's undefeated at 125 pounds, the weight of the belt. She's 3-0 there, so she's a front runner. Liz Carmouche, the first ever woman to walk down the aisle at a UFC event, who took on Ronda Rousey and almost beat her with a neck crank from the back, until Rousey did everything in her power to get free of it and eventually submitted Carmouche by armbar. But there's a story there, because not only is she the consensus #1 women's flyweight in the world after beating the consensus #1 former Invicta flyweight champion Jennifer Maia, she also has history with Shevchenko. In let's see, what was it? They fought, I believe, Shevchenko. No, I think Carmouche has a win over Shevchenko, but that would have been at bantamweight, 10 pounds heavier. But anyway, that fight, that's why that makes the most sense in my opinion, either Calderwood or Carmouche. Just a reminder, on a different note, UFC 230 still does not have a main event. Cough, John Jones, cough, cough. We can only pray, at least. Joseph Benavidez has stated the obvious, that him versus Ray Borg had been pulled off UFC 229 because of the court-ordered restraining order of protection issued against Conor McGregor. So they obviously couldn't fight on the same card, let alone be in the same building after the Brooklyn incident. So a prime example of someone other than McGregor paying for what he did and losing money because of it. And that's coming from a McGregor fan through and through. Former UFC lightweight Melvin Gillard was caught on video getting into a brawl at a bar in Denver, Colorado. Police are looking for him at the moment, still haven't found him. His last fight was in Japan's Risen Fighting Federation, like I said, Pride 3.0, where he was TKO'd in the first round. I think it was Gomi who did him in, or it might have been Koji. I gotta double check on that. UFC vet, an easiest example of the massive body change of the average fighter, or at least body muscle mass, after USADA came in. Eric Silva has officially signed a deal with Bellator. Right after that was reported, about 12 hours later, he was already booked and signed. He will take on Lorenz Larkin October 12th. Which one is that? I believe that's the Connecticut card, the day before the Long Island card. So that'll be the Ryan Bader, Matt Mitrione undercard. So it'll be Eric Silva versus Lorenz Larkin, and they'll be fighting as alternates in the welterweight Grand Prix. So if anyone's injured, the winner of that fight will slide into their place. Kimbo Slice, Kevin Ferguson's oldest son, and MMA prospect Kevin Ferguson Jr., aka Baby Slice, will face Corey Browning at 155 pounds at Bellator 207. He's 3-1 as a pro after losing his debut. He's won 3 straight, all in the first round. Started his career at 170 pounds, but has slowly been cutting down in weight after his last 2 bouts being at catch weights. The longest one ago was 165 pounds, and the more recent fight was 160. He subbed Devin Brock in 95 seconds in his last outing at Bellator 197 in April. It's good to see that he's got some more versatility, at least more than his father did. You'd have to nowadays to get really anywhere in the higher levels of the sport. One of the 2 top orgs, hell, even 3 top orgs, if not the regionals. Jessica Andrade wants a title shot at strawweight, obviously against champ Rose Namajunas, but now it has come out that she had offered to fight Shevchenko for the vacant flyweight belt at 228 last Saturday. So she may get that fight before the year's up, since the UFC is going to need a relevant name. So throw her in there with Carmouche and Calderwood. Andrade would make a hell of a lot of sense. I believe she's fought at flyweight before, and she could get it done. I mean, Shevchenko versus Andrade would be interesting. Wrestling is about even on them. Striking, you got technique versus brawling. That'd be a really good fight, and just what the women's flyweight division needs. Good shot in the arm there after the long hiatus it was on while Montano was champion. Covington wants Woodley for that unification bout. Remember that prior to Woodley versus Till, it was said that even though Covington was stripped, quote-unquote, of his belt, he would get the winner regardless. So he wants Woodley for the unification bout at MSG. And this all works out since the MSG card's in November, and Tyron Woodley just came out after his big win this weekend saying he wants to defend the belt in November after just a 2-month layoff. So he's clearly trying to prove a point to Dana White, who no-showed the fight, the belt presentation, and the post-fight press conference, because, you know, he definitely wanted Till to win, since all the shit he said about Woodley, some of it right, some of it wrong, some of it in the middle, about him being boring and not a draw. Woodley, we'll get into it after the headlines, Woodley's clearly making moves to alter that complexion he's given of himself to the sport. And the last bit of news we have is CM Punk might fight outside of the UFC. He still has the 1 fight left on his contract. I doubt we'll see it. He'll probably just get a dismissal out and out. But then again, under the new ownership of Ari Emanuel and WMG, IMG, they got a lot of money to make up from buying the UFC, so they may just have the fight happen as an undercard fight, try to get the very last out of those pro wrestling fans by giving him it's hard to think of who would be lower than a fucking an MMA photographer at his last outing, who's, I already forgot the guy's name, who won a decision against Punk. But I mean, hell, first fight he gets subbed by Gall. Second fight he could have been finished, but it wasn't. So hey, maybe he's got enough in him in his third and final fight to finally get a victory if they give him, I don't know, a special needs fighter. Or so remember that guy a couple years ago who had no arms or legs but wanted to fight, and so some special needs teacher fought him and like was only kind of jabbing him in the head throw him that guy. Maybe Punk can get that done. Either way, moving on. Let's do a quick review of the picks I gave you guys for 228. Let's start at the bottom here. I said Alex White would beat Jim Miller. White won by a rear naked choke, so I was wrong on that one. Keep in mind, I only spent an hour researching the lower ones. I said Craig White would get Diego Sanchez. Diego won a decision. Who the fuck saw that coming? Not me. Neil over Command Show. Obviously, Neil got that brutal head kick, that knockout of the year candidate. So that was my first victory of the night. And some out-and-out beauty of Matt Serra training. Aljamain Sterling got a second most beautiful knee bar of the night, which is odd, but I guess they come in pairs. They're so seldom. But I said Sterling over Cody, and AJ got it done. He got a knee bar in that fight. I went Suarez over Esparza. Suarez got the job done, pounding out the Cookie Monster in the corner. I went Price over Abdul, but I also said, but if they stand and bang, it could go either way. They stood and bang, and Abdul knocked them out with a TKO. Let's see, closing in on the main card, I went Jimmy Rivera over Dotson. Rivera pulled out the unanimous decision using his superior striking and aggression, so I got that one right. And you know, the blind man call of the night, the obvious as the sun is bright call, is Zabit all day easily over Brandon Davis. I put in my notes. Zabit won by knee bar from back mount for the it's got to be the submission of the year in the UFC. I can't think of anything close other than Sterling's sub, or maybe that RDA vice grip on Pettis that broke a rib. But I think Zabib should easily win the submission of the year from many different publications and websites. In the co-main, I went Carolina over Andrade, if she can weather the first round storm, I wrote. Lo and behold, Andrade comes out in the first round, fires those hooks off, that technical striking and distance needed to beat, and Carolina got hurt too early to even do anything. And it was all downhill from there. Andrade made her case and proved that she deserves another shot at the gold. And why not? I mean, she stuck it out for 5 rounds and did not get as beat as some of the other people versus Joanna when she was champion. I mean, the only other person who put up a better fight versus Joanna would probably be Carolina, that didn't end up beating her, obviously Rose withstanding. And Andrade just knocked out Carolina, so hopefully hopefully Andrade will get a shot at flyweight or strawweight. So whether it be Rose, who's allegedly dealing with some issues after the Brooklyn bus incident. People are saying she's not leaving her house. I don't know how that affects her training, or how valid these observations are. Hopefully they aren't that valid, because you know, Rose is a good lady, great fighter, and just seems like a positive person. I really don't wish that on her. Well, anyway, hopefully Andrade will get a crack at either Rose, who I think would probably be able to figure out Andrade and not get clipped as early as Carolina did, or at least Shevchenko and Andrade at flyweight. Well, either way, moving on. In the main event, I said Woodley. Heart wants Till, but the common sense says Woodley. And it also depends on which Woodley shows up. I've said it 100 times. You can check our first podcast or our 10th. Any of the episodes out of here where it's come up, I've said Woodley's the guy ever since Strikeforce, where he'll go out there and he'll put on one amazing fight where he looks like the greatest welterweight of all time. Quick knockout, the Koscheck fight, the what's the other one? The Lawler fight where he won the title. There's a bunch of examples. But then he'll put on 2 or 3 fights where he doesn't seem to have any confidence in his power, and just plays it safe and wrestles the guy. So, like, for instance, we have the Lawler fight, which is him looking like an Adonis, knocks out Lawler, and even finishes him off, not with face punches, but fucking pounds him in the chest until he gets TKO'd, which, try to find another example of that. And then you have 3 fights, the Wonder Boy fights, both where he seemed tentative, but when it was time to strike, at least he struck and did more damage in both fights. The second one, only a couple seconds, but in the first one, multiple times. He even went for a guillotine in that fight. And then lastly, the Maya fight, the third of his cycle, where he broke the record he had set in the previous Wonder Boy fight for the least amount of punches thrown in a title fight. And then boom, after those 3, he comes out, he immediately goes for the right hand on Till. He doesn't connect. Till uses his distance, because Till's got that style where his chin's up high, his hands are low, so you think it'd be easy to hit him. Woodley found out, okay, it's not that easy, so I'm going to bide my time, mix it up. So he mixed it up, and then eventually in the second round, he lands the right hand, floors Till, they get into it, and as soon as I saw his arms moving as they're locked up side to side on the mat, I was thinking, no way, no fucking way. Woodley's going to go for a Bravo choke or a Doris? And lo and behold, the second I saw him lock it up, I start going to my old lady who's sitting next to me, holy shit, he's going for it. I mean, it was so shocking to see Woodley, Mr. Decision lately, go for something, let alone something that advanced. And not to mention, to set up the Darce choke, he was using catch wrestling techniques that I've talked your guys' ears off about. He was trapping the arm, attacking with the other, trap the arm, attack with the submission. All these power top wrestling maneuvers that you only see in catch that jiu-jitsu guys don't use. That's why I'm always saying, big wrestlers, this is your bread and butter. You need to learn these techniques. And that's exactly what Willie did. He probably didn't know exactly what he was doing, in the sense of, like, he didn't know this is catch wrestling. He probably had a coach who just said, well, this would probably work here, and they didn't put a label on it. But it shows you, to this day, catch wrestling has a place in this sport. Well, anyway, good on Woodley. Good thing he proved the point. Hopefully, with talk of the quick turnaround, that works out. He goes out there, he'll dispatch Kobe Covington just as fucking easily if he keeps it up. And hopefully he breaks this pattern of great fight, 2 or 3 boring fights, great fight. Hopefully he goes out there and he just starches Kobe the Troll Covington, Mr. fucking guy who gets stripped of the belt, and then goes to the White House to get a picture with Dan White wearing a fucking MAGA hat and presents that orange motherfucker with a belt. But anyway, we'll stay tuned. We got more headlines. We'll get back at you. This has been the Blue Corner. I'm Mike, as always.